The purpose of this recording is to prepare students for the upcoming unit exam. So number one, it says find the amplitude. What you can do is you understand that the value in front of sine or cosine is going to give you the amplitude. You can also type in the function. You can also type in the function f of x equals -2 sine of x. And you know that the midline is y equals 0. And if you maximize this, then you notice that its lowest point is at -2 and its highest point is at 2. So the amplitude is going to be 2. Okay, it's 2. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the next one because it's asking for the amplitude. So we have, and I'm going to go ahead and exit out on that one. So I have y equals 2 cosine of 1/3 x. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to minimize this using this sign right there. And you notice that it starts here at this point, which is 2, and it finishes its period right here, which is at 6 pi over 2. So you notice that the period is longer, but we don't have to worry about the period because it's only asking for the amplitude. And once again, the amplitude in this case is 2. So the answer for number 1 and number 2 just so happens to be 2. Okay. We're going to go ahead and go to number 3. And it says describe the transformations required to obtain the graph of the function f of x. So in this case, I'm going to graph the parent function. In this case, it's sine of x. And I don't know why it's doing that, so let me go ahead and fix this. So we have y equals sine of x, that's a parent function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And we notice that we have 0. It starts at 0 and it ends at 2 pi. That is the parent function. Now, the new function, we have f of x equals 1/3 of sine of 4x over 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the amplitude, which is equal to the absolute value of 1/3, which is equal to 1/3. And then I'm going to find the period, which is 2 pi over 4 over 5. So the period is 2 pi over 1 times 5 over 4. So, because you got to get the reciprocal. So 2 pi times 5 gives you 10 pi over 4, which is divisible by 2. So you get 5 pi over 2. So it's 5 pi over 2 because 10 divided by 2 is 5 and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 5 pi over 2, which is roughly 2.5 pi. So you notice that the period is a little bit longer, and that's going to give us a hint as to what has happened to the transformation. So if I just say y equals 1/3 and I say sine of x, then you notice that the vertical, it isn't a stretch on the vertical, it's actually a shrink. So it's either going to be C or it's going to be A because it is a shrink. It isn't a stretch. If it was a stretch, it would have been going higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out B I'm going to mark out D. And you notice that it has to be C because the shrink is by a factor of 1/3. Now, a horizontal stretch, we do know that the period here is 5 pi over 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do 4 divided by 5. 4 divided by 5. And you notice that the period is longer. So we start here. Our max is here. Our intercept is here. Our min is here. And our our intercept is here. So you notice that there was a stretch. So it's a horizontal stretch. So the answer is C. The answer is C. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, example 4. Example 4, so it says, and what I'm going to do is it says we're going to compare sine of x again. There's sine of x, and of course I'm going to go ahead and type in y equals sine of 6x. And you notice, and I'm going to go ahead and identify the amplitude. So the amplitude is equal to 1. And I do know that the period is 2 pi over 6. In other words, the period is shortened. So it's pi over 3. So we know that it's sine, so we know that it's going to end right here at pi over 3. And you see how we have more of these graphs here within 2 pi. So we know that it isn't stretched. It isn't stretched. It actually shrinks. So we know that it's between A and C. So it wasn't a stretch, and it wasn't a stretch. So now it's between the reflection over the x-axis. So it was not reflected over the x-axis. It was reflected over the y-axis, and we're going to see that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and type in -6, and there is a reflection over the y-axis. Okay. For number 5, it says describe the transformation required to obtain the graph of the given function. You see that 9, if there's a number that's in front of sine, cosine, or tangent, that's going to affect the vertical. So I'm going to go ahead and graph the parent function. In this case, it's tangent of x. It looks like that. And in fact, one example of tangent is going to occur between x equals negative pi over 2. That black line represents the asymptote. X equals pi divided by 2. So you see there, that is tangent, and there is an asymptote every negative pi over 2 or pi over 2. Now if I were to graph y equals 9 tangent of x, then you notice that it was stretched vertically. So your answer is D. The answer is D. You would notice that it is stretched vertically. Okay? And the answer for number 4 was C. And the answer for number 3 was C. Just to go back. So 5 is D, 4 is C, 3 is C. And of course we know that number 2 was C and 3 was A. Number 6. It says, write an equation for a sine curve that has an amplitude and a period which passes to the given point. So the amplitude is 5. So we know that the amplitude is equal to 5. I know that the period is equal to pi over 2. In other words, you know the way sine looks like. It has to be done within 0 to pi over 2. And we know that the intercept starts at 0, 0. So it looks something like this. We know that it's 0, 0. We know that the cycle has to end at pi over 2. Now, if you want to get what is, or if you want to figure out what is the middle radian between 0 and pi over 2, what is the middle? It's going to be pi over 2 divided by 2, which is pi over 4. And so you notice that we're going to have to go by fourths. In other words, we have 0. This is pi over 4. No, I take that back. We're going to have to go in, we have to go by eighths. I apologize. We have to go by eighths. So this is pi over 1 pi over 8. This is 2 pi over 8. And this right here is 3 pi over 8. And this is 4 pi over 8. So I have to break this up into eighths. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 divided by 8 is a half. So you notice that that's how I got the half there. So I broke it up into eighths. And this right here is pi over 4. And now we know that the amplitude is 5. We know that the amplitude is 5, so it's going to go like this. It's going to go up to the maximum point, which is 5, and then it has to go to the minimum point, which is -5. Remember that the midline is 0. So we have y equals, we know that the amplitude is 5. Sine, of course we don't know bx, and of course plus 0, so we're going to write plus 0. We know that there's an intercept here, and we know there's an intercept here. So it goes up 5, intercept, minimum at -5, 3 pi over 8, the minimum is -5, and then it goes up back to pi over 2. So let me repeat. You start at 0, you reach the highest point at pi over 8, which is 5. Then you go through pi over 4, that's an intercept. You go down, so at 3 pi over 8, it's going to be a -5, and then you go back up at the intercept, which is pi over 2. Okay. So now we got to find b. Remember that the period is pi over 2, and to find the period, it's going to be 2 pi over b. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply. So we have b times pi is equal to 2 times 2 pi, which gives you 4 pi, divided by pi, because you want to eliminate the pi. So b is equal to 4. So your equation is going to be y equals 5 times the sine of 4x. So your answer is B. And if you want to check, it's going to be y equals 5 sine of 4x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these off here. And let me stretch this here. So here is 0. Here is pi over 4, like I said. And of course it ends at pi over 2. This is the minimum point, 3 pi over 8. And of course the max is at pi over 8, 5. Okay? If you want to see it, and there it is. Okay? For number 7, it's asking to find the period. So to find the period, you're going to do some arithmetic here. It's not that hard. So the period is 2 pi divided by the value of b, which is 6. 2 pi over 6 can be simplified. It's going to be, actually you're dividing the numerator and the denominator by 2, so you get pi over 3. So this is cosine. And I'm not sure if this is the graph of cosine. It doesn't appear to be the graph of cosine, but I do know that the period is pi over 3. It's pi over 3, and so your answer is B. Okay. I'm going to talk about the transformations. It says describe the transformation required to obtain the graph of the given function. I know the negative that's on the outside is going to be a reflection over the x-axis. So what you have to do is you have to find which is the reflection over the x-axis. So that negative is going to reflect over the x-axis, and I know that A has a reflection over the x-axis. I know that C has a reflection over the x-axis. I know that D has a reflection over the x-axis. So we know that B will not be an answer. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that one out. The 8 is going to move that vertically up. So vertical translation, this one says vertical translation up 8 units. Vertical translation up 8 units. So the answer will not be A, because it says it goes down 8 units. So between C and D, that 1/6 is going to affect the period, and what it's going to do, it's going to stretch the period. So your answer is D. So let's go ahead and look at the graph. Let's look at the graph at Desmos. So if I look at Desmos, and I'm going to move this just a little bit so you can see that. I'm going to go ahead and graph. I'm going to grab tangent. I'm going to give tangent of x. And I'm going to go step by step. You have y equals negative tangent of x. You notice that's a reflection over the x-axis. And then we had y equals negative tangent of x plus 8. We know that it moved up 8. So I'm gonna make these. I'm gonna cross these out. So now you're gonna see y equals negative tangent of x, and then you have 1 over 6 x, and then it's plus 8. Oh, I have an x right there. So you notice it was a horizontal. It's a horizontal stretch. So your answer is D, horizontal stretch by a factor of 6. Okay. There it is, the stretch. Okay. All right, number 9. It says find the zeros of the function, and the interval is from negative 2 pi. 2 pi. So we're going to use Desmos again. It's probably that's the best thing to do for so you can see it. Remember, the zeros of a function is where it crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to graph f of x minus 4 equals minus 4 sine of 2x. And you notice that we have 0, pi over 2, we have 3 pi over 2, and we have 2 pi over 2. We also have negative pi over 2. We also have negative pi. And we have negative 3 pi over 2, and it's negative 2 pi. So you notice that these are all the x values. All these x values are the zeros, and the only one that satisfies that is C. So the answer is C. Make sure you understand that all the x values that are the intercepts are going to be the zeros. Okay, so when you submit your homework, make sure you give me a copy of this, indicate that these are all the zeros, okay? We're going to go to the next page. Number 10, I'm going to let you work on number 10. Just remember that for sine, and what you can do is you can always put into the calculator f of x equals 1/3, and then we have sine of 2x. The midline, just so you can write some of these key points, the midline is 0. We know that the amplitude is 1/3. Now the period, the time it takes to do one cycle, is 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. So everything has to be done within pi. So let me go ahead and graph that. And we're talking about sine. So we have, it goes up here. It starts at 0, goes up, goes down. So a B shows you a period of sine, has a period of pi. So I'm going to check. It could be B. This has a period of pi over 2, so that can be it. This is cosine. How do I know it's cosine? Because it starts at 1, 0, 1. And this is just regular sine curve with a period of 2 pi, so your answer is B. Make sure you understand that you can identify the midline, the amplitude, and the period. So now we're going to go to 4. And 4 is your sine function. Now, that negative means that it's going to reflect. The negative means it's going to reflect over the x-axis. And the 2x means that it's going to make the period shorter. So I'm going to let you do number 11. Use your graphing calculator and find the answer. I did provide the answers at the end of this review, okay?